Welcome back to Book Break. It is well and truly autumn, which in my book, if you'll pardon the pun, is the perfect time to settle down with some really good historical fiction. I also think it's a perfect time of year for really long books, and so I have combined those, and in this video I'm going to recommend you some really good long historical fiction that you can cozy down with in the longer, darker evenings. All of the books I'm going to mention are new historical fiction books out this year, and they are all coming up on 500 pages, if not even longer. Starting with Once a Monster by Robert Dinsdale, which is a genre-bending book because this is actually a retelling of a story from Greek mythology, but it has been transposed through time and it's set in Victorian London. So Once a Monster retells the story of the Minotaur. You may know the Minotaur. He was a monster, half man, half bull. He lived in an underground maze so complicated no one could find their way out of it. And he was fed young men and women who were basically sacrificed to him. There's a whole longer story as part of this. I actually dived further into this book in a video about books that will have you rooting for the monster, which is what this book will do. So I'll link to that video below. I got to go on a little mini tour around London for it, which was really fun. So that's the Minotaur, a terrifying villain from Greek mythology. But this book sort of reimagines what if the Minotaur hadn't, spoiler alert for your Greek mythology, been killed? What if he had survived through the centuries and was still living in Victorian London? And there he is found washed up on the banks of the Thames, half dead, by a little girl who is part of a mudlarking crew of children who scour the Thames, or the banks of the Thames, to find treasures that they can sell and try and make their fortune that way. What this little girl now sees when she discovers this terrifying beast in the water is someone that needs help and someone that she wants to nurse back to health. But the villain of the story is Mr. Murdstone, who is the man who is kind of in charge of these group of mudlarking children. And what he sees is the chance to make himself very rich because, of course, this is Victorian London and circus shows were very popular, particularly ones where people would pay to come and look at anyone with any kind of abnormality. And so a half bull, half man is a chance to make Mr. Murdstone very rich. So this is a story that, like I said in that other video, is one that will have you rooting for the monster, or rather have you questioning who is the real monster of the story, and whether or not we all have a bit of monster inside us. I really like that blur of Victorian historical fiction with Greek mythology, and this has got enough darkness to be perfect for settling down in the long nights. Another book that fits the Dickensian London theme is The Fraud by Zadie Smith. Charles Dickens is actually a minor character in this book and it is written in Dickens's style. This one is inspired by a true story. It's about a woman called Eliza who is the housekeeper and former lover to a famous novelist called William Ainsworth, who had written a book set in Jamaica despite never having been there, and basically having got everything that he knew about Jamaica from a propaganda booklet. And then their household gets caught up in this trial, a real trial that really happened called the Tichborne case, which happened when a man showed up claiming to be the long-lost heir to a fortune. So there are several frauds that the title could be referring to. Oh, and side note, Zadie Smith reads the audiobook of this herself, which is so cool, and I have been told that it is amazing and that she sings. TheScribe of Sevens by Laura Shepard Robinson is a mystery set in Georgian times, and this one clocks in at 560 pages. This starts in Cornwall, where a travelling fortune teller dies, and then his daughter, Red, is adopted by mysterious, kindly strangers. We then follow her growing up in Bath, moving to London, and trying to figure out the truth of who her parents really were. Like always with Laura Shepard Robinson's books, the Georgian setting is incredible, really wonderfully described. Featured in here are small publishing houses in St Paul's, to St Bartholomew's Fair in Smithfield, which is really near where our office is, to the grand houses where the members of high London society live. And the twist in this book is phenomenal. Nobody I've spoken to has guessed this before the end. For a really sweeping historical fiction novel, The Armour of Light by Ken Follett is the highly anticipated next book in the Kingsbridge saga. And those of you who've been anxiously awaiting this one will be pleased to hear that there is a lot to sink your teeth into here, because this book is 752 pages long. It's set between 1792 and 1824, and it kicks off shortly after the spinning jenny was invented, which brought in a whole new era of industry and manufacturing. And within a generation, lives everywhere were completely changed. So this book grapples with the fallout from this new world order, and we get to see so many different storylines of different lives that were affected. So a woman's husband is killed in a work accident due to negligence. A young woman is fighting to fund her school for impoverished children, and all the while Napoleon is waging war throughout Europe. The Ghost Ship is book number 3 in Kate Moss's sweeping Joubert family chronicles. Funny enough, the first book break video that I ever made was an introduction to historical fiction, and it featured The Burning Chambers, which is the first book in this series. So I will link to that below if you're interested in going to see baby Emma 5.5 years ago. The series spans centuries in the story of the Joubert family. And by book number 3, The Ghost Ship, we have reached the 17th century, where we will meet Louise Redon Joubert, who captains the ship, the Ghost Ship, alongside her lover, who has a lifelong secret about his identity. It's a rollicking story of bravery, love, pirates, queer identity, spanning Holland, France, the Canary Islands, and it is inspired by a real story of real pirates. So I will link to another video below that I made on LGBTQIA+ books based on real historical figures. And I know I said this was a cozy kind of video, but I am finishing up with a decidedly uncozy one. He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan is an epic, brutal, exciting, dark, and really, really queer historical fantasy. It's the follow-up to She Who Became the Sun, but this time we're raising the stakes. This story is a fight for the throne in 14th century China. It is a battle of wits between a cast of extremely morally grey characters. So it's not a cozy story, but it is definitely one to read as the nights get darker, and it will fill the Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon shaped hole in your evenings. So those are my 6 recommendations of the best and biggest new historical fiction to read this autumn, and I would love to hear your recommendations in the comments below. And I will link here to that video I mentioned on LGBTQIA+ stories based on real historical figures, so do click through if you want to learn more, and I'll see you next time.